Hello, and welcome to Seeking Heaven, the Near Death Experience and Other Phenomena. I'm your host, Tamara Caulder Richardson, and today we have Curtis Childs. Now, he is the host of Off the Left Eye, which goes through the teachings of Emanuel Swedenborg's vast amount of work. It's very good. If you haven't seen it, you can see the links below and check that out. But today, make sure you check out the other episodes with Curtis. We've done quite a few, and it is amazing. We're going through spiritual secrets and through Swedenborg's work. Curtis is very kindly answering these. And today we're going to be talking about spiritual laws. Is there reincarnation? What does Swedenborg say about other galaxies or planetary systems? And do our prayers really reach heaven? And are they answered, especially for those that were wanting divine assistance? So that's a lot. So welcome back.
Let's do it.
Well, so let's go through first. Let's talk about it's not really simple, but we'll hit this one first. I gave an example to you pre-show that I know a few people that and like all of us do, okay? This is not meant in judgment. This is meant totally in love, but that you see, oh, bless them. They're just not getting it. They're not going in the right direction. They're really kind of missing things, and it could be different things. And you really want to help them, but you realize that maybe we can't reach them. So if we resort to prayer and ask God for assistance and intervention, what does Swedenborg say about that? Are our prayers being answered?
Prayer can do powerful things, but it seems like there's a particular way in which it can affect situations. I was just actually, I think next week, or just recording a show about this on our channel.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah. So there's this passage where he talks about the impact that prayer has, and he says that prayer is speech with God, and he says speech with God while also focusing on the thing that you're talking about, so forming some kind of mental image on it. And he goes on to say that when we do that from a motive of love and faith, so I'm not trying to pray to get ahead in some materialistic way. I'm not praying to satisfy my own sort of sense of self-image and reputation. That what happens is there's an inflow from God that opens our inner depths to God, and that we can actually receive in the moment, and in what he calls in one translation, an emotional revelation from God in the form of joy, comfort, peace, whatever it is around that. It sounds like, and he echoes this in other places, it sounds like what he says is that the biggest impact that prayer has is on us. So it opens us up to God, because you think about it, you're saying, hey, I don't know what to do about this. Can you help me out? This is
Right.
us acknowledging where God is. I think that could open you up to a solution, or a way you can impact it. I don't know if he ever says that, like, when we can pray and that will change what God can do for someone else. It doesn't mean it couldn't possibly be. I know that God is already, like, pedal to the metal, trying to help everyone as much as can be done. The only thing standing between anyone and help is their willingness to open to God. So I know it can do a lot for us, and it could be that if I get opened up to God, God can let me know what it is that I could possibly do to affect the situation. There's this time when Jesus says to his disciples, I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was hungry. I mean, I was a stranger and you took me in, naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me. And all the disciples are saying, "What? We didn't do that. What are you talking about?" And he says, "Well, if you did that to anyone, you did that to me." And Swedenborg says that this has a spiritual meaning, like all parts of the Bible, and that those conditions, hungry, thirsty, in prison, sick, and whatever the last one was, those have analogs to spiritual needs that we have as well. So to be spiritually hungry is somebody who is led by a desire for goodness. So just because goodness is food to the spirit, like food is food to the body. So if you think about being hungry, it is a desire for food that leads you. So he says that there are all these different conditions that people are in. For example, being spiritually in prison means being trapped in falsity, whereas so you have wrong ideas that are keeping you trapped, whereas being sick spiritually is being trapped by evil. So you have these habits or whatever it is that you can't get out of. Everybody who's in all those different conditions needs different kinds of help. Just like physically, if
True.
somebody's hungry and you give them water, it doesn't do anything. If somebody is naked was the last one. Naked symbolizes
Mm,
you don't have the basic
wonderful.
truths to protect you from life. If somebody needs help but you give them something that doesn't address their condition, you're not really helping it. Actually, this is should be a major point of study, is how do you help people who are in these different conditions? So it could be that if I've got somebody that I care about and I want to reach them and I can't, it could be that through prayer, God can let me know they're actually not thirsty, they're hungry. Like, you
Mm,
don't try to tell them what's going on. They need to feel love right now. So I think that
interesting.
there's times I think when we just can't reach people. And I think, God is probably feeling that same ache to reach those people. But it doesn't mean that I think the
Mm,
effort of providence all the time is doing nothing but trying to lead that person into a state where they get receptive. So it may be that there's nothing we can do in the moment, but I think making that intention that, hey, I'm here to help them. If you can ever possibly use me, I think that does give God us as a tool in his toolbox to affect their life. So I do think either way, I think the praying thing can do a lot of good.
okay. And what things do you think we should pray about?
Swedenborg says that you should be praying for spiritual and heavenly things, and spiritual things have to do with the truth, and heavenly things have to do with goodness. So it's either some way that you're going to do something in service of truth or something that's in service of goodness. So mainly praying for, help me understand this, or help me to um, you know have good motivations around this, to be coming from the kind of love that you would come from. I think that's the most powerful prayer, because that's something that can really be that's something that can be changed quickly, and doesn't have negative consequences. Like, if I was to say, hey, will you just let me win the lottery? I really want to win the lottery. I don't know what that's going to do in my life. If I suddenly
Truth.
get all that money, it could turn me more materialistic and selfish. It could destroy
Mm,
relationships. I don't know. But to be
right.
able to understand better what the truth is, and come from more love, that's always good. That's always good in any situation. So I think that praying for those things, um, uh, and using prayer as a way to acknowledge our dependence on God, and God's presence, it's always good for you.
Oh, I think that's wonderful advice, which leads right into spiritual laws. Like you said, probably not a good idea to pray for all the money. And if you did get all the money, I mean, it could change you, and maybe not in a good way that you don't know about. So, the spiritual laws, what are some of the spiritual laws that Swedenborg talked about that we need to adhere to?
That all goodness and all truth and all life come from God. And so that we become more spiritual and more aware of the truth, the more that we give God the credit for good things that are done. So even if I go out and do something good, if I'm that's fine. I can go do something good, and it can happen. For example, let's say the YouTube channel that I'm involved with, and I think it's done some good for the world. We get comments from
Absolutely.
people who say, this helped me when I was in a place of need. This came to me at just the right time. This People would take the time to actually comment and say, this really helped me. And I can say, wow, I did that. That's great. That's fine. But actually, the truth is, any good that was done there, and in anything, it's not just my stuff, in anything, is done by God. That is
I
the Lord
agree.
doing that. So the more that I can say, hey, not who gets credit for it, but of course it's God's, and I'm so glad you did that. That's following a spiritual law. And well, it might seem counterintuitive, like, hey man, that my happiness comes from thinking that I'm doing a lot of good stuff. But actually, there's a much greater happiness in enjoying giving the credit to God, and rather than focusing on, well, isn't it so great that I helped people? Isn't it so great that they're happy? isn't it so great those people are happy now? And I know what it's like to need that help and to get it. So I think that's one spiritual law. The more that you can be giving credit to God for the good things, the happier you will become. Even though initially to your ego, it seems like that's the opposite of what I want. But I think that that is one spiritual law. Another spiritual law is that what you love makes you who you are. That whatever you love and intend and do from intent becomes a part of you. So yeah, just make sure you're ingesting good things, and that will put you into a better and better place. Um, then there are spiritual laws which are you correspond with all the 10 commandments. So like I was saying before, every part of the Bible has
Yes.
spiritual meaning. So all the 10 commandments, don't steal, don't murder, don't commit adultery. Those, sure, in the literal sense, it's not good to do that, but there's a spiritual meaning as well. So murder, for example, there's spiritual meaning of that commandment. It's not just about have you killed someone or have you not killed someone. Harboring hatred for people has murder within it. Like it's the same kind of impulse. So it's that commandment is
Uh,
also about not harboring hatred for people, not trying to harm them, like not trying to do things like destroy their reputation or their livelihood. There's more layers to that. Um,
yes.
Steal, and so there are, yeah, there are layers to all those. So there's just
Mhm.
these different shades of what it is that's actually harmful and what we should not be participating in. I think that to try to, as best as we can, resist doing those things and to call on God's help to help us do that. I think that's following another spiritual law. It's a spiritual law that, and I'll just give you a few of these because there's so many,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, sure.
it's a spiritual law that God never allows anything bad or harmful or evil, whatever word you want to use for it, to happen unless good can come out of it. So divine providence is making sure that nothing happens unless in the end it will be turned to good. So if something harmful is allowed in my life, something that's painful, it's not that God is causing that, but but can't prevent it, because in the end more good will come out of it. So let's say I have
Okay.
some kind of hard loss or some kind of tragedy. It's terrible at the time under ideal conditions, when the human race hadn't messed things up by so much selfishness, materialism, and everything else. That wouldn't have happened. But in the meantime, God is going to use that so that the impression it left on my spirit, the way it changed me, the way it opened me up, is going to pay back eternally. Like it's going to be part of me forever, and I'm going to, because I've seen the unhappiness, I can recognize the happiness. It makes me understand the depths of love better. Whatever the impact is, in the end, it's going to make you happier forever. That the only way as anything bad is ever let to happen is if in the end the good will outweigh the bad to happen.
I want to throw out an example there. One that I've seen before is that I've had people that have come from a haunted house or had a negative paranormal experience, and I'm going, and normally I go, oh my gosh, it sounds horrific, right? But then what happens is God changes it, where they were atheist and now they've completely turned around and they're relying upon God. God removed the situation. Now they're at peace. They know what peace feels like. They know what the love and the mercy of God is. They wouldn't have known that ever, because for whatever reason, maybe they're being hard headed. So the gradient had to go up to the
Right.
point that God got their attention. And now they're back to a situation where they're happier. And so that's to me a good example of, I've seen it time and time again. And so it seems kind of, but then you don't know how many times God tried different ways, and this
Right.
was just another way to get their attention. And now they're 100% pro God.
Yep, and just you can trust the process and know that God is love and wisdom, and so God is never doing anything that is not for your sake. That it's never that God is like, well, I'm fed up with you, so I'm just going to let you have everything that God does is for our sake, rather than for God's sake. The love I was talking about before, where you enjoy doing what is good for others rather than your own ego, that comes from God. So God is like that more than any other being, because God has all of the power and all of the intelligence and all that. But only wants to give that to us, give happiness to us. So this is us just becoming more in harmony with the way that God is. And the more that we do that, the more we can be open to receiving the happiness that comes with that way of life. So it's just the way that things work.
And don't you also think that in that free will to choose whatever by choosing God, that's got to please God because that's being back in harmony with our natural state, which we're from God.
Yeah, and think about if you are the best analogy is like you're a parent to a child, and if you're a parent and you have a child and you see that they're getting into things that are not very good and it's making their life miserable, even though they can't really see the cause and effect, so they don't realize that they're sabotaging their own life. If you saw them get out of that stuff and start to come over to stuff that's actually good for them and making their life happy, and it's stuff that maybe you had been recommending but they didn't hear before, but now they hear it, how happy are you going to be about that? Your happiness is in seeing their happiness. That's God is that, but like cranked up to a million. So absolutely, God doesn't really want us to do what's good for His sake. It's for our sake, because then we can accept the happiness of heaven that God is always trying to give us. So that's what love does.
That's beautiful. Well, so how does this, is there any more that you have that you want to share, or do you want to move into reincarnation?
Let we could do reincarnation. I feel like I could go forever on the different laws.
Okay, but I'm really getting what you're saying about the
Yeah.
love and appreciate, and it's a humility when you're saying about devotion to God. It's a humility, it's a grace there,
Hmm.
versus the opposite would be arrogance, right, and
Yeah.
self-knowing. And so there's a humility, and I think that some people have a problem with surrendering. And I'm thinking, well, I don't. Another way to look at it is humility. It's just
Yeah.
humble yourself.
That's right. And you know what? You know why I'm into the idea of humility? Because of all the hard stuff that I've been through. Just like we were talking about there. That I definitely, if you would have talked to me when I was like 18, I knew about these ideas of, oh, God does everything that's good. You're supposed to spread it. And I didn't like it. I was like, wait a second, I want to be the one who's doing stuff that's good. But after I have gone through a number of hard things, well, the hard things were hard, but something I learned out of them is like, no, I just want everything to be good. Like I just want, I don't. It somehow has softened my ego going through all those things to where I love the idea of no, no, no. If God, there's a lot of people that are hurting out there. If God is the one who really cares the most about those people and knows how to help them, let's get out of the way and let Him do what He needs to do to help those. That's what matters. It's not like, am I better than this person or how much credit? Let's just
Yeah,
get it done. Like let's stop
right.
bickering about who's the best doctor. There's people that need help right now in the hospital. We got to go and help them. It totally, through my hard experiences, has just given me this spirit of like, no, let's just do what's right. Let's just do what's good.
And to add on to that about ego, one thing about being humble and having humility is the other side of that. A lot of people feel uncomfortable with, and I do too at times, is being vulnerable.
Hmm.
And that means being vulnerable with other people. That means not giving the preconditioned answers, but just saying, I don't know, or what do you think? Or just being real.
Yeah.
What a concept. And I think that people they acknowledge that. Do you know what I mean? They know
Yeah.
they can see through when others gloss it over. So I think that it's not just with God and the divine, but if we're supposed to love our neighbors as ourselves, aren't we supposed to be more genuine with
Yeah.
other people?
Right. Because it's true. I mean, it's true. Like you don't know the answers all the time.
Right.
Yeah, and humility is an extremely precious resource to have, because he, if we're gonna just squeak one more law in there, that really all happiness and all heavenly happiness, uh, humility is a prerequisite for that. You cannot
Right.
have arrogance and pride cannot coexist with the peace and happiness of heaven. And the peace of happiness of heaven is a much preferable state to be in as compared to anything else the ego can dream up. So it's really good for you to have that humility, because not just because like, well, you should be humble, but because that's the path to happiness. That's like the secret to happiness. That's why God cares about us. God doesn't need us to be humble and saying, oh God, you're so great, for his own sake. He doesn't need that. He needs us to be humble because arrogance kills joy. Arrogance kills the joy in us.
Ooh.
And if God can get rid of that arrogance, then he can do what he wants, which is to give us joy and peace and happiness.
Yes, and that's the way that we heal is through our hearts, right? But if our heart is blocked, it's hard for God to get in there and work with that. So it's
Right.
important to humble ourselves.
Right. Right.
So let's talk about the soul, the spirit, how big the
Yeah.
soul and the spirit is, and about what Swedenborg talks about reincarnation and about the essence of the soul.
Sure. We did a show called "Do We Reincarnate?" Yeah, "Do We Reincarnate?" So if you just search that Swedenborg, you can see sort of the
Mhm.
full take on it because
Okay,
yeah, it's like a sort of a complicated answer. I would say in
sure.
some senses, Swedenborg says that you don't reincarnate at like the traditional sense. Like you don't, meaning that you won't come back and live another life with another physical body in this world. However, he does talk about a lot of the kinds of things that people describe in reincarnation of the for a time forgetting sort of who you were and learning new things and going in cycles of being like up and down. That does happen in the spiritual world, and you do continue to learn and grow forever in the spiritual world. But he likens it to like like the time you spend in the womb is like the time you spend in the physical world. So you're in the womb one time, and whatever happens to you in the womb, it really sets the stage. So if you don't quite get the right nutrients or if you get enough of this or that, it really affects how your body develops. But then you leave the womb and you've got the body that was shaped by that, but then you go and live your life with the body. It's kind of the same here. Like right now, you and I are developing our spirits, like we're starting at, it's like our spirits are in sort of a womb condition right now, and then when our bodies die, it's like life starts. And when you're on that other side, how your spirit is affected by this, and you continue to grow and change forever, but you don't go back into the womb in the same way, which I know there's a lot of people who do believe in reincarnation. It seems to be somewhere Swedenborg differs with them, but he does talk about past life memories too, where
Okay, it
he
does.
says, so to him, um, and this I think was before there really was much discussion of reincarnation.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't think in Europe there was like they didn't really know of that then. But he says that spiritually, thoughts and feelings can be directly shared. So you can like telepathically, like when you're in the spiritual world, like you can like telepathically share ideas, even feelings. Like if I'm feeling
Mm.
a certain kind of joy, I can directly pass it into you. It's like there, it's kind of like we're all like Bluetooth connected to each other in a way that we aren't here. And he says that you are, as I think we talked about in a previous episode, you're surrounded by spirits and angels all the time. So you're in spiritual company, and you can actually every spirit, every angel has an aura of their life that goes out from them. So this is like a projection of who they are that's all around them. So things are very shareable, and that actually you can experience someone else's memories, because memory, like anything, can get shared. So Swedenborg's explanation for why people have these memories of things they've never done is that you're actually in proximity to the spirit who that was their life, and you're experiencing that as your own rather than that was your life previously.
Okay, so that was his take on that, that
Yeah.
the shared, and that would be coming from what, like the Akashic records or something where you're picking up shared information?
Yeah, I don't know how he had heard of it, but he mentioned a few times that there's a phenomena where it's, so he described it almost like a memory leak, where you can get a memory of another spirit can leak into yours, and he says this is why there are some people who think that you return to life over and over again. But that was his take on. It's interesting because
Okay.
yeah, he gives even the principle of like a karma,
Mhm.
where which I think is often tied to reincarnation of like what you kind of what goes around comes around.
Right.
That he does talk about. He doesn't use that word karma, but he says in the spiritual world, um, for example, evil carries its own punishment, within it. So like as you do something that's harmful, that very action kind of brings harm back on yourself. And the same thing with good things. So there's a lot of elements of it, that do seem to occur, but just in different contexts than I think are described in other traditions.
Well, it's not exactly per se karma, what you're saying, but you're saying is back to kind of what he was saying earlier, right? That what you focus on in love, you bring more of.
Right. Yeah.
So if you bring a lot of love, I mean, you're probably going to get more of that.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Like
it's cause and effect.
Yep. Yep. And that happens very tangibly, very directly in the spiritual world in a way that it doesn't quite happen here.
And I guess, and it also depends on the state that you're working at, what he's saying too, how
Right.
fast it comes back to you.
Yep.
Correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Please subscribe, like, and make comments, and support this channel by becoming a member. Thank you for your continued support.